Hi, and welcome to Trex Academy, where you can learn everything you need to know about building your deck project. I'm Devin, and in this video you'll learn how to install a rail post. So the first thing I like to do, especially if I'm working alone when installing those rail posts, is to take a scrap 2x4 like I have right here, and then I'll be temporarily installing this to the underside of my joist. It's just going to work as a helping hand as I'm installing that rail post. Go ahead and get that attached just using 2 screws. And there we go. Okay, with that in place, now I'll be able to bring that rail post in, and as I'm installing it, it's going to act as a helping hand. What I'll do from here, I'll continue installing these supports in any of my joist bay that have a guardrail post, and after that, I'll come back and start to install the structural blocking for those rail posts. We've got those post supports in, so now we're ready to start working on our first rail post. We're going to start here at our corner, but I think this is a great time to take a second and talk about just how important this connection is. So this is a critical deck connection, and because of that, it's actually determined by your local municipality, because this is going to have to withstand a lot of lateral forces throughout the life of the deck. I know that in my local municipality, I have a few different options, but the one that I'll be using is also supported by an evaluation report. So that configuration is going to start with a 4x4 block just next to my post, right in here, to add that support on the side. And then to give it support on the back, I'll be putting in these 2x8s here, same material as our joist. That'll set just like that. I'll be holding all of that together using those 8-inch SDWS timber screws. Before I can do that, the first thing I need to do is plumb up that post, which is just to make sure that it's straight up and down all the way around. So to start that process, I'm just going to put a screw just here in the bottom, hold it all in position, and then I'll be able to start plumbing it. All right, so with that fastener in, now it becomes a lot easier to plumb up this post, especially working by myself. So to do this, I'm just using a post leveler, which is great because you can see it has a small level on 2 sides here. You could also just use a traditional level. That would work just fine. I'm going to get this in position. I'm going to go ahead and tack in one of these 3-inch exterior grade wood screws. Hold that right there. And now I'll just check that this is reading level. Okay, there we go. Now I have my post temporarily plumbed. I can start moving on to install my blocking. But before I do that, I actually need to mark all the locations of those timber screws that are going to fix this all together. Okay, so I'm going to start right here, because I know I'm going to have blocking attached on both sides. So we need to start at the back of this post, because that'll be where that back blocking starts. Just make a line here. And then those fasteners need to be in the center of those 2x8s. So I'll measure to the center of that 1.5 inch material, which will be 3/4 of an inch. And then I'll measure over 1.5 inches. Okay, let's go ahead and transfer those lines across the top. Then we'll transfer that down vertically onto my rim joist. So from here, I know that I have 2 8-inch fasteners fixing my front rim joist to that joist. I just need to make sure that I avoid those. Those are set at 2 inches down from the top, 2 inches up from the bottom. So what I'll do for these fasteners is I'll set them 1.5 inches down from the top and 1.5 inches up from the bottom. Now I know I won't have any kind of conflict when I put all these fasteners in. Go ahead and make a mark here, and where all those marks are, I'll have one of those 8-inch fasteners. Let's go ahead and move to our front rim joist. Again, we're using those 8-inch fasteners, and they'll be going through the front of our front rim joist, through our post, and into that back blocking. So for that, I'll start at the middle of my post, and from our plans, I know I need to measure 3 inches or 3¼ inches. And then I'll just make a line down the front of my front rim joist. And I already have marks at that 2 inches down and 2 inches up from when we planned out the fasteners on that front rim joist. Again, this is going to keep us from hitting these fasteners that are going to be 1.5 inches down. That'll be perfect. We'll be doing the same thing with our 4x4 blocking, which we have right here. So go in there, and then those 8-inch fasteners will go again through the front rim joist, through that blocking, and into that back blocking. So I've got some marks made here at the center of that 4x4 blocking. I'll extend that line again down there, making an X where they intersect. And now I've got my 4 fasteners that'll hook all this together. So from here, I'm just going to be repeating this process because I do have this back blocking, those 2 pieces. Need to make sure that I secure it from this side as well. It'll just follow that same pattern, 1.5 inches down, 1.5 inches up from the bottom. Okay, so we have all the locations of those timber screws marked. Now we're ready to start installing our blocking. So we're going to start with this 4x4 post blocking. We said before it'll go just here to the side of that post. And then our back blocking is going to be these 2 2x8s, which I have sandwiched together just using those 3-inch screws. You don't have to do that, but I think it makes it a little bit easier. Speaking of making it a little bit easier, especially while working alone, I'm going to be adding a brace on top of these blocks, just like this. And then you can see as I drop that in, it'll be held in place by these edges right here. Make it a lot easier to fasten all this together instead of trying to hold that in place while we put in these 8-inch fasteners. Let's go ahead and tack this in. Again, that will be temporary, and we're using those 3-inch screws. It is important to note though, you need to make sure that this brace doesn't extend beyond the front of that blocking. Otherwise, it might hold it away from your post. With that on, let's go ahead and drop it in place. There we go. So now we're ready to start securing this all together using those 8-inch timber screws. But before we do that, we need to pre-drill first because that is a really long fastener. Got my corner post installed, and now I'm working my way down my front rim joist. I'm going to stop right here at this next line post or intermediate post. The configuration for an intermediate post is just a little bit different than what we did on the corner post, and that's according to that evaluation report. We still have our 2x8 back blocking right here. Again, I have those secured together just using those 3-inch wood screws, and I still have that 2x6 working as a helping hand. So again, this is great because not only does it hold it in place for me, it makes sure that the top of that blocking is flush with the top of my joist. The main difference is going to be we're not going to have that 4x4 blocking next to our post as we did with the corner, and we're going to be using 5-inch timber screws instead of those 8-inch to secure that back blocking. Now we will still use the 8-inch timber screws going through that front rim joist into the post and into that back blocking to secure the post. Let's go ahead and drop the post in place. Right there. And I'll get a rough idea of where it should be for plumb. Looks good. And now I can slide that back blocking in place. See how awesome that helping hand can be. So with that in position, I'm looking really good. I'm going to use that same technique to use those 3-inch wood screws to temporarily plumb the post while I start to fasten all of my timber screws. So it should be, yep, looking good here. And I'm just a little bit off on the back side, which if my front rim joist was perfectly straight up and down, I should see plumb here as well. But this is actually pretty common. And if I check it really quick, yeah, I can see I've actually got a cup in the wood in my front rim joist. But that's no problem. Since I'm plumb here, all I need to do is add a shim. Just a little bit, there we go. I'm just making sure that this side of my level is plumb. Looks great. So I prefer to use composite shims for a few reasons. They don't rot, which is awesome, and they also won't compress, especially when we're putting these large fasteners and pulling it all together. Additionally, they don't dry out like lumber would, so I know that I'm not going to be losing plumb over time if that were wood and it were to dry out. So from here, all I need to do is break this shim off, just clean that up with the chisel. So now we're ready to install those 8-inch timber screws, again going through that front rim joist, through the post, into the back blocking. I'm going to start by pre-drilling. Okay, so we have the post at the top of our stairs installed. So now we're going to move over to our side rim joist. We have talked a little bit about determining the post locations, and that was mainly in our ledger video because we didn't want our joist to interfere with those posts. But now we'll cover it again a little bit because we're going to be determining the location of our post on this side rim joist. I already have the location of my first post in the corner. That's going to be the one closest to the wall. All I really needed to consider from that is I needed to have enough space that with my post installed, I could still install that post sleeve and then the post skirt over top of that. You do need to keep in mind though that you can't be more than 4 inches away from the wall to the surface of that post sleeve, and that's a requirement of code. Okay, so to figure out the post locations for the other posts that might be here in the middle, I'm going to have to break this up into equal sections of railing. So to do that, I'm just going to start by measuring off of the clamp that I have here. And that works as a nice helping hand. So I'm going to be measuring from the center of that post to the center of my corner post. That'll put me at 158.5 inches. Again, I need to divide that up into equal railing sections, but it can't go over my maximum of 72 inches. So what I'll do is get my calculator out here, put in that 158.5 or 158.5, then I'll try to divide that into 2 sections of railing. So that puts me at 79.25 or 79.25 inches. Obviously that's above my maximum of 72. So let's try that again, but this time we'll divide that 158.5 by 3 sections. Okay, so that's 52.83 or roughly 52 7/8 inches. So what that would mean is every section of railing would be 52 7/8 inches from the center of the post to the center of the next post, and that would continue all the way across. So let's go ahead and get the location for our first post. I have a line here showing me the center of that corner post. I'll pull this down and make a mark right at 52 7/8. Okay, and then just to show you where these post locations are going to be, got some 4x4 blocking. I'm just going to clamp that in place. And as I do this, I'm making sure that that clamp is right on the center line that I already have on this blocking so that I can continue to use that as a helping hand to get to the center of that next post. Okay, so we'll just continue this process, measuring from the center of the post to the center of the next post. And that'll be at 52 7/8. Okay, just get my next piece of blocking. Get that secured in place, and even though this is the last post I'll be putting in position, I'm still going to clamp that with that in the center, because now I can double check that it's going to line up and that all 3 sections will be equal. And there we go, looking really good. Okay, so just to quickly recap, what this will give us is 3 equal railing sections of 58 7/8, and we'll also have our 2 line posts right here. With that out of the way, I'm going to go ahead and start working on my first line post. Okay, so when we're installing these line posts, our configuration is going to look a little bit different since we're here at our outer rim joist. We still have these 2x8 support blocks, but instead of doubling up and working as our back blocking, they're now going to be working as side blocking. Let's go ahead and bring in our post. There we go. Again, I have that support underneath there, just working to help me out. Okay, we'll also be bringing back in that 4x4 blocking. This time, that's going to be working as our back blocking. Now we'll be using those timber screws again. Those 8-inch will go through the front rim joist, through our post, and into that back blocking. We'll also use those 8-inch timber screws to go through the front rim joist and into each of our 2x8s. 2 of those for each one. We'll do the same thing to connect this joist to those 2x8s as well. 2 here, 2 there. And once all of that's secured together, we're going to be securing this to the side using 5-inch timber screws. We'll have 2 here and 2 here, 4 all together going through that back blocking, and then do the same thing through our posts, 2 on this side and 2 5-inch timber screws on this side. It is important though that you stagger those just to make sure that they don't interfere or run into one another. I've got all my positions and my fasteners marked, so now it's time to plumb up my post, then I'll start securing this all together. We're doing the same process that I've done so far, just temping that up with that 3-inch screw. Okay, so we've finished installing our rail post on this upper deck. And in our next video, we're gonna be covering when you should use a flush beam installation versus a drop beam installation for the framing of your deck. If you'd like to see that video and a whole lot more, you can go to trex.com/academy, and thanks for watching.